Okay, we will start with the prayer first.
Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarot tam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi.
Okay, good morning, good evening, everybody. Welcome back after a gap of 3 months. My apologies for delaying a few weeks extra, but now we are ready to start. With the continuation of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra course we started last year. My hope is that by the end of this year, like by July, we should be able to cover the 4 chapters, because we covered most of the difficult topics last year, which is related to Samadhi. And we entered into the second chapter, which is the sadhana, which is the actual practice. And then we will be able to go to the Vibhuti-pada and finally go into the Kaivalya-pada, which is a little bit more difficult. But these 2 chapters should be okay. Since we have the foundation, we should be able to navigate quickly. We'll be able to cover 5 sutras on the average going forward. So we'll try to complete this course by the end of this year. But teaching is one thing, understanding is one thing, but please try to contemplate upon the meaning. And if you have any questions, we are always available to discuss and make sure that you understand this. Scriptures like this probably may need 1 or 2 or 3 iterations. So once we complete this year, you have time to review this. Probably after 1 or 2 years, we will redo this course one more time so that these ideas are firm in you. So today, as we are starting after a long time, and since we paused at a verse which is probably one of the most difficult verse to understand, the sadhanas, what I thought of doing today was like a recap of the chapter 2, what we covered so far, and also probably reiterate the verse 18 and make sure that you are clear with the key concept of what is moksha, what is purusha and prakriti. And as I always say, the challenge with Yoga Sutra is, because of the metaphysical model used, is Sankhya, which may not be familiar with a lot of people, because probably most of the people are familiar with the Vedanta metaphysical model, but Sankhya is slightly different. So we just need to understand that a little bit to understand the overall Yoga Sutra. But as I always say, to understand the practice and the details of the practice, we don't need to worry about that. But since this is an intense study, we wanted to understand that. Before I get started, any questions or any comments, any open questions, or from your own reflection, anything that you want to discuss? Otherwise, we'll again give it 15 minutes at the end. Okay, seems we are good. So we can get started. So the first chapter of Yoga Sutra has 4 chapters, as we all know. It is the first chapter is called Samadhi-pada. It is talking about a condition of our mind, which is absorbed state of mind. And we also talked about the fact that Samadhi is not just one binary state, it's a continuum, starting with your ability to control your mental activities. And finally, it goes to a state where you will be able to suspend all the mental activities. We'll see this in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, which we are studying right now, in the upcoming verses also, but that is what is Samadhi. We talked about different types of Samadhi, the nature of Samadhi, all those details in chapter 1. And chapter 2, when we started, we started by saying that Samadhi is fantastic state of mind. It is probably one of the most healthy state of the mind. It is one of the key skills we all wanted to learn and experience. But how do I reach there from my current state of getting completely uncontrolled state of mind? from my current state of destructive mental state or distracted mental state or occasionally depressed mental state or most often distracted mental state to this stable state of samadhi. How is that possible? So this chapter gives the sadhanas or practice following which you should be able to reach this state of samadhi. So we started introducing this chapter by understanding a topic, means understanding the layout of this chapter. There are 10 topics covered in this chapter, mainly focused on the sadhana. And we were at the verse 18, which is how to break the bondage of karma. But before that, we started, the first topic was Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga. So this is very important because Kriya Yoga is the first sadhana everybody has to practice before you go to this Ashtanga Yoga and everything. Because this will be some general practice. Because the whole Ashtanga Yoga is pretty much, you have the Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. While you sit and meditate, you need to have certain lifestyle. You should be in certain lifestyle so that your meditation will be more effective. The probability of you getting into samadhi is higher. And the first practice prescribed is Kriya Yoga, which is closer to the Karma Yoga described in Bhagavad Gita. The Kriya Yoga consists of 3 major topics: Tapas, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. We went through this in detail, but tapas means you put some consistent effort to reach a goal, spiritual goal. Swadhyaya means you are trying to learn the scriptures and follow the words of the scriptures so that you have a roadmap. And Ishvara Pranidhana is a process by which you surrender all your activities as an offering to Ishvara. And then whenever you get a result, you take it as a prasada from the Ishvara. So these are the 3 major things mentioned in Kriya Yoga. And we saw a little bit more details, means I'm scanning through the steps. Why we need Kriya Yoga? Because Kriya Yoga will help you to mitigate the obstacles towards samadhi. And the key obstacles towards the samadhi are 5 kind of kleshas or impediments. We talked about this in detail. They are ignorance, avidya. Avidya means you don't understand yourself properly. You think that you are the body, mind, and senses, but in fact, you are not. So that is ignorance. Nitya, anitya, viveka. We talked about this. So it is your ability to understand the true self versus the perceived self. That is the avidya. And then it is the I-ness or asmita. You think that your self-identity consists of your body and the mind, and you fail to understand your own true self. That is asmita. Means they are related because avidya leads to asmita. And when you get identified with the body and the mind, you will have likes and dislikes. Strongly based upon my attachment or identification with the body and the mind, I will have binding attachment, raga, and also I will have aversions called dvesha. And when I am strongly attached with my body and the mind, I have an obsession for the continued life here. I'm extremely scared of the death. So that leads to apinivesha. So these are the 5 kleshas we saw are critical. So avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and apinivesha are the 5 types of klesha. And the purpose of the Kriya Yoga is to make sure that you mitigate these
Sukha,
5 kleshas. And Patanjali says, right, these 5 kleshas will be mitigated only when you understand the nature of the Prakriti and the Purusha. Till then, this will be there. But Kriya Yoga will definitely lead you to that state. Meaning, it will help you to come to this stage. So, once it is done, Patanjali tells this meditation can help you to, I'm sorry, the words are playing, sorry about that. The meditation hand can help you to keep your mind stable. So The Kriya Yoga is going to help you to get a conducive state by mitigating the effect of kleshas on the mind. On top of this Kriya Yoga, the meditation is going to help you to keep your mind stable. And then we had a discussion on what exactly is influenced, means how the kleshas influencing your karma, because karma is the root cause. We talked a lot about karma. We talked about how the law of karma affects you, because law of karma is a complicated topic. We had a lot of discussion. These kleshas are, it leads to the karmas. Because, for example, because of this asmita or raga dvesha, for example, I like a lot something. So I may cut corners and I may do something, and that may create certain karmas. It will influence me later. So this reservoir of karma or the pool of karma is definitely is influenced by these kleshas. And the purpose of doing Kriya Yoga is to mitigate these kleshas and thereby putting negative karmas into my pool of karma. So this is what we talked a lot. And then in verse 18, we said we started discussing, we started summarizing this influence of this karma. So this is what we have been discussing earlier. And now what we will do is we will go to verse 17 and 18, and we will pick up the thread from there, and we will try to little bit go back and try to understand this little bit in little bit holistic fashion. So that's what we are going to do. Let me go to verse 18, and from there we can get started.
Pare he.
So this is where we were at when we stopped last time. So what is the root cause of all my suffering? That's what Patanjali was discussing here. Patanjali means, let's play the verse and try to understand that.
Drashtru-drishyayoh sanyogo heya-hetuh.
So Patanjali tells drishya, drashtu, samyoga, heta hetu, heya hetu. So why I am suffering? While I enjoy this life is not free of suffering. Every day I suffer some way or the other. What exactly is the root cause of this suffering? That is what was discussed in this verse. Patanjali tells the combination or the superimposition of the seer and the seen is the root cause of all the suffering. And you need to detach the seen from the seer. That is what you need to do. So this is very important. So for me, right now, when I say I am the seer and everything else is the seen, what exactly is my identification with myself? In the transactional world, I identify myself with Rajesh, and this computer in front of you or all of you sitting in front of you are seen. And yoga tells me that that's not true. When I identify with my body and the mind, it becomes a source of suffering, because the body will change, the body will have problem. So Patanjali tells, in fact, you are not the body and the mind. Body and the mind is not the seer. It is in fact seen. And if you all remember, what we did at this point of time was, we went to Drik Drishya Viveka, another book which is written by Shankaracharya, and try to understand what is the difference between the Drik and the Drishya. Who is the seer and who is the seen? So in that analysis, what we found that, let's say that I'm seeing a flower of hibiscus in front of me, right? The seen will be the flower, and I take my eyes or myself as the seer. If you go to one level down, is your eyes are the real seer? Because whatever seen by my eye, because whatever captured by my eye, it will be seen by the mind. So what exactly I am seeing is not what is seen by the eyes, but what is captured by the eyes is observed by my mind. That is what is I am seeing. So that is the second level of perception. Now, if you go one level down, is exactly what is captured by the mind mind is the seer or the seen? I can very well understand that. A little bit of analysis. The consciousness in me is the real seer, and what exactly is seen by the consciousness is what is captured by the mind. So when I see a flower outside, I'm not seeing the flower directly. Instead, I'm seeing the image of the flower captured by the eyes, which is captured by the mind. That is what is I am seeing. So here Patanjali pauses and tells us that, then who are you? You are not the mind. You are not the sense organs. You are not the external object, the flower here. The real you is the consciousness in you. In the language of yoga, it is represented as Purusha. Everything else is called as seen, and that is called as Prakriti. So you need to untie the seer from the seen, because right now I identified with my mind and my eyes and think that they are me, but here the change requested is in not saying that they are not part of me, but they are not me. I am possessing those equipments to transact with the world outside. Just like I use a binocular to see something outside, long, far distance, I use a microscope to see small things. They are upakaranas or karanas. They are not me. But I need them to transact with the world. I need them to interact with the world, but they are not me. If I take them as me, for example, if your telescope got damaged, I think that I got destroyed or I got damaged. It's exactly like that. So what Patanjali is saying is that your body, your mind, your sense organs are instruments given to you to transact with you at this time and space, but they are not you. When you die, what is going to happen? What is getting dead is not yourself, but the instruments are getting destroyed. That's it. So when you shift this identity, your self-identity from the body, mind, and senses to your own Purusha, that is what is really needed through all the spiritual practices. So the purpose of the Kriya Yoga, the purpose of the Ashtanga Yoga is eventually to give you that experience, that shifting of your identity from the limited body mind to the unlimited Purusha is the goal of yoga. So for that, you need to untie the connection or the superimposition between the Purusha and Prakriti. In the language of yoga, the consciousness is Purusha, and everything else is called Prakriti. This is what is the essence of the verse 2.17. And we need to expand this idea a little bit further in the verse 2.18. Let's see that.
प्रकाश क्रिया स्थितिशीलं भूतेन्द्रियात्मकं भोगापवर्गार्थं दृश्यम्.
So in this one brilliant sutra, Maharshi Patanjali is defining the scope of the scene, right? We already talked about that. There are two things you need to consider. One is the seer, and the second one is the seen. And we wanted to identify what is Prakriti and what is Purusha. So we already said that untying the Prakriti from the Purusha, seeing Prakriti as separate from the Purusha is the goal we are trying to achieve. So for that, you want to understand what exactly is Prakriti, what is exactly is outside of me, what is not me. So this verse gives a brilliant definition. So he tells, right, what is Drishyam? He tells Drishyam is something which has three characteristics. It tells Prakasha, Kriya, and Sthiti. If I say Prakasha, Kriya and Sthiti, you may not understand. But if I use a different terminology, you may understand. It is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So Patanjali tells everything you see has these three qualities, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So the scene or the Prakriti has these three the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Sattva means the natural property of a substance. Rajas means it is hyper, and Tamas means inertia. That is why it is referred as Sattva, means light, and the three things, right? So it is talked about as cognition, activity, and inertia. So everything in the scene has these three qualities. And then what exactly is the scope you are talking? He tells Bhudaha, all the elements in the universe. Everything is a material in the universe. Everything, Bhudaha means elements. Everything that is made up of Panchabhuta can be considered as Drishyam or the Prakriti. So that includes the physical universe around you, because anything you can touch and feel, anything that you can experience is made up of basic elements, the Panchabhuta, and that is what is Drishyam. And it includes the subtle elements also. That is why Indriyatmakam. So Bhuta, Indriya, Atmakam. Bhuta means the physical elements, and Indriya means your power of perception, your power of action, everything. So the physical element and subtle element. If you put this definition, your scope of the Prakriti comes everything that is physical, everything that is mental, everything that is intellectual. So your body, your mind, your intellect, your ego, everything comes under the scope of Drishyam or the Prakriti. And everything, whether it is your mind, whether it is your intellect, whether it is your sense organs, whether the external objects, everything will have these, is operated, consists of these three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tapas. One more point. So three things are highlighted here. One is everything that is seen has these three qualities, which is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Every material objects in this universe is a part of Drishyam, and every Indriyas or the sense organs is Drishyam. And what it helps, it will give you Bhoga. Bhoga means sense of ownership or sense of experience. For example, if I eat an ice cream, I'm the enjoyer. It gives you a feeling of ownership of something. That is Bhoga. Then Apavarga. Apavarga means it will give you the liberation. It will also help you to liberate. It's a pair of opposites, because when you understand it properly, you see them as separate from yourself. This becomes a tool for gaining moksha. So everything in the material universe, everything in the mental universe is part of the scope of what is seen. And this can help you to gain bhoga or moksha. This is the scope of what is seen. We will, since this is the first class after a long time, let's elaborate on this point for the next 15 minutes, and then we will wind up, and next week we will continue. So let's go a little bit further. I'm going to go a little bit further just to understand this topic a little bit more. So this is a kind of a recap or kind of an understanding of whatever we have discussed so far. The first point means, which we discussed in the previous class, is samsara. Samsara means the world you experience and live in. It cannot give the ultimate contentment or happiness. At any point of time, you are a seeker, right? So today you think that you have everything, but are you completely happy? Are you completely secure? Absolutely not. There is always fear. There is always inadequacy, right? I don't see myself as complete. I don't see myself as fulfilled. I don't see myself as suffering free. That's the world of ours in the current state. Yeah, it has some fleeting joys. It is always have something to attract us, but that doesn't mean it can give you the ultimate contentment and ultimate happiness. That is for sure. I don't have to talk about that. You all know that for sure. The second thing is, Patanjali tells in verse 17, why? Because you are not identifying yourself properly. For example, if you identify yourself in a dream, and let's say that if you are suffering, let's say that if you have a disease in the dream, what is going to happen? You are suffering. You think that this is the end of the world, but you don't understand. What you don't understand that what exactly is suffering in the dream is not the you, but the dream body, the dream mind are suffering in the dream space and the dream time. The reason why in the dream I suffer when I see the whole thing is the superimposition of Purusha, the consciousness in me, with the dream body, the dream mind, and the dream situation. Because when you wake up from that dream, that disease seems to be, it was there at that point of time, but it is not permanent. I do have an existence outside of that dream space and dream time, and that is what it is. So this Purusha and Prakriti, the dream's Purusha and the dream Prakriti, that is what is suffering. So this is very important. The superimposition of Purusha and Prakriti is the root cause of all the sufferings. And what exactly is the path out or the way out? It is called Kaivalya or the Moksha. Moksha means freedom. Another word used in our scriptures is Nirvana. Nirvana means you flesh out something, right? You flesh out something. What exactly you are fleshing out? Your identity with your mind and intellect. You are not saying that they are not important. You are not going to reject them, but you are not seeing yourself as the body and the mind. Instead of saying that I am the body and the mind, I say that I have the body and the mind. That is the only difference. So Kaivalya or Moksha is this disidentification of Purusha, which is the consciousness, from the Prakriti. That is what is discussed. So what happens is, this technique to attain this liberation, it is known as Samyoga Darshanam, a technical term used. It is the cognition of one's own true nature. What is one's own true nature? My own true nature is nothing but my identity with my consciousness or Purusha. That is what the technique used to attain the liberation. And then for that, what we need to understand a clear picture of Drishyam and Drishya. Drishya Padartha. Drishya Padartha means what exactly I'm seeing versus who am I. So please note these 5 points. This is very important. Samsara, it cannot give, or the world, it cannot give me complete contentment. And why? Because the superimposition of Purusha and Prakriti is the root cause of all the suffering. And Kaivalya or Moksha is my disidentification of Purusha from the Prakriti, that is the Kaivalya. And the technique we use is Samyoga Darshanam, which is a cognition of understanding my own true nature. And for that, we need to have a clear picture of what is Drishya versus what is Drik. So in this picture, you can see this Om represents the Purusha and everything else, the Vasanas, the body, the mind, the intellect. This is a famous BMI chart created by Swami Chinmayananda for his teaching. So I'm just borrowing it. Your body is Prakriti, your mind is Prakriti, your intellect is Prakriti, and the Vasanas is Prakriti. And through that body, you perceive the world of external objects. Through the mind, you feel the world of emotions. And with the intellect, you think the world of thoughts. So everything, this body, mind, intellect, and the object, emotions, and thoughts, everything will come under the umbrella of Drishya Padartha, not the Drik. So that Drik or the seer really is consciousness. Usually what is happening is I identify myself with the consciousness, with the vasanas, body, mind, and intellect. Even though I treat these objects as separate, I always identify with my BMI. So this process of yoga, or the ultimate goal of the yoga, is to shift my identity from the BMI to the actual Purusha. So this is very important. So let's continue to explore a little bit further on this topic. because we really wanted to ground on this topic before we go further. So drishya, right? So drishya is that which is included and recognized through the medium of thought and emotion. Means, see, the why it is said the medium of thought, because everything external, there are external objects, but I recognize the external objects through the medium of thought. So anything you can recognize, anything you can identify through the medium of thought is drishya. It could, if there is an emotion, I recognize through that medium of thought. If I see an elephant outside, I recognize through the medium of thought. If I have a thinking, burning thought in me, I identify through the medium of thought. So eventually, I directly perceive only the thought. Everything else is represented as thought by the appropriate sense organs. So what Patanjali is telling here is, drishya consists of everything you recognized through the medium of thought. In other words, everything in the material objects, everything in your mental objects, everything in your emotional space, everything is drishya. And this vrittis includes smriti and nidra, right? You remember, right, in the first chapter we said, the pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smritayaha. So including every states you experience, right? Your dream state, your deep sleep state, and your waking state, every experience you have, they are not Purusha, but Prakriti. Everything you experience can be considered as a drishya padartha. So that's what is very important. And then the 18th sutra examines the essential nature of this drishya padartha. This drishya padartha, or what the scope, the objects included within the scope of drishya, it comprises of three gunas, right? Three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So any object you take in the universe, it will be a combination of always together, right? It will have, it is always in a constant state of change, but it will consist of these three gunas. And let's examine this a little bit further. These are some of the basic Sankhyan thoughts we need to have clarity before we go deep into Yoga Sutra. These gunas, let's say that if I take a pen or if I take a particular food, what happens? These gunas will be there in each one of them. And actually it will exist in a combination, right? So everything will have a dominant guna. For example, a particular action, you can see that it may have sattva dominated, but you can definitely see something rajas and tamas in that. Without the combination of these three, no objects will be there, right? So that's what it is. It is a combination of these gunas, three gunas. And then these three gunas in their different combination consists of the entire objects in the universe. Anything that you can touch, see, and think consists of these external objects, and every object has these three gunas, and they are called as Prakriti. Together, this entire material universe is called Prakriti. That is a key definition. So this is the Prakriti. And the purpose of these three gunas or the Prakriti is twofold. One is to give bhoga, which is the some experience to the external objects. And second thing is you can get apavarga, which is the liberation. Why? Because you see them as separate from yourself, and that gives you an ability to contemplate and get out of it. So it can bind you and it can give you liberation, properly used. Even Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells this, right? Your mind is your biggest friend and the greatest element. The Amrita Bindu Upanishad, there is a popular Upanishad. It tells, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. The mind alone is the single cause by which you can get liberated and also you can get attached. So this is very important. So the Prakriti consists of the intelligence, the ego, and it has all the sattva, rajas, tamas. It has the mind, it has the five sense organs, and it has the five cognitions of action, and it has all the five the organs of perception. It has all the subtle elements. It has all the physical elements. This is the scope of Prakriti. So Prakriti is simply everything material in this world, whether it is physically material or subtly material. It is subtle. There is a difference between what is physical and subtle, right? The classic example is the computer hardware and the data stored in that. So let's say that the hard disk that you can touch and feel is considered as a physical object, but the data stored in there, right? It is known as subtle. You know that there is something is there, but that won't be physically perceivable. For example, if you take a hard disk, take a weight of the hard disk, let's say that it is 2 pounds. And let's say that you dump the whole data, the entire video of your life, maybe 2 TB of data into that hard disk. If you weigh that hard disk again, you know that the content has significantly changed, but the weight will not change, not even by an ounce. That means the data stored is subtle. Like that, in our world, there is a physical matter and subtle matter. Both of them will come under the scope of the Prakriti. So anything material is Prakriti, and anything in the Prakriti has these three gunas, which is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And then these Prakriti can be used as getting attached to the external world. If used properly, it can become a means of liberation also. So let's continue. Then a few more points we wanted to convey. Essentially, Purusha or the consciousness, it's not a doer at all, right? It is not affected by these three gunas, and it is not a doer of anything. What happens is, since it stays closer to these gunas, you assume that Purusha has these qualities, right? The classic example given in our scriptures is, let's say if you have a crystal and if you put a colored cloth in front of the crystal, what is going to happen? You feel that that crystal is orange because there is but you really know that the orangeness in that crystal is not part of the crystal. It is superimposed from something externally, which is a cloth in this particular case. And because of that superimposition, the clear crystal appears to be orange. So like that, Purusha do not have any gunas. It is free from all the gunas. But you think that, okay, I am hyperactive, or I am inertial, or I am pure, all things because of the superimposition of Prakriti. So Purusha do not have any attributes or any gunas, but it is different. So these gunas and their modifications are superimposed on Purusha, and the Purusha do not have them. That is one thing. And then the Purusha discards its identity or the bondage with the Prakriti, you get the liberation. As long as the superimposition is there, you are bound. When the moment you discard that superimposition, that is different. And there is no bondage for Purusha, and there is no need for liberation. What we need is only the disconnect from that superimposition, because the Purusha is ever pure and it is ever secure, it is ever happy. So that's some fundamental teachings of yoga. Let's go cover one more point. Sorry. So what happens? In the 18th Sutra, what we covered was, it was explained how the Drishya Padartha, what is seen, includes what is cognized through the agency of thought. So this is, please think through this, then only you will understand the scope. Anything that comes as a thought, for example, if it is a mountain, that is represented as a thought. If it is an ocean, it is represented as a thought. If you take it as an emotion, you feel love towards your child, that is again expressed as a thought, right? And if you are solving a problem, that is also expressed as a thought. This is what the scope of the Prakriti. So anything that comes as a thought, anything represented in your mind as a thought, they are Prakriti and they are called Drishya Padartha. They are not you. Anything you can think of, that is not Drishya Padartha. It includes the experience of all the three planes of consciousness, right? And then they are of three types. They called as Prakasha, Kriya, and Sthiti, which is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And their modification is the entire universe. Every matter in the universe you experience have these things. That includes your physical body has this Sattva, Rajas, Guna, Tama point. Your mind has that. Your intellect has that. And everything in this nature has that. This is a model. That's all. Then the 19th Sutra takes up a detailed analysis on this Drishya Padartha, and it continues this analysis, which we are going to see next week. And it will tells what are all the stages through which these gunas goes, right? And it talks about how a guna changes from one to the other. And then also it talks about is these gunas are created or how can we destroy these gunas, and are they nitya or anitya, meaning real or unreal. So this is a further analysis we are going to do. And then we are going to see how these can be detached from the bond, how we can get escaped from that bondage of karma. So that concludes the first, the topic. And then we will go to the most famous Ashtanga Yoga. So tomorrow, next week, what we will do is we will cover the next 5 sutras. And the week after that, we will cover that first topic, and then we can start the Ashtanga Yoga, Yama Niyama Asana, which all of us are waiting for. I know that this particular topic was a little bit complicated, but I definitely wanted to talk about this verse because otherwise this may not be clear to you. And since we are restarting it, I wanted to repeat this and make sure that this concept is clear. So now we can pause and have any questions. I can even stop the live video, but then we can have any questions.